We believe NBC News should seek out conservative Republican voices to provide balance in their election coverage. But it should be conservative Republicans, not a person who used her position of power to be an anti-democracy election denier. And we hope NBC will reconsider its decision.
There is revolt happening at NBC News and MSNBC over the hiring of former Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel, who tried to facilitate a fake slate of electors to steal the 2020 election. She has now been hired by NBC as if she's a completely normal political analyst rather than a threat to democracy who was unwilling to call out Trump's lies for years about the election. And there are MSNBC hosts who are saying, no. Here is Chuck Todd appearing over the weekend with Kristen Welker and saying to Kristen Welker, who interviewed Ronna McDaniel on the program yesterday, I can't believe that you had to do this. They are revolting at MSNBC and NBC News. Take a look at this.
Let me deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation because I don't know what to believe. She is now a paid contributor by NBC News. So I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract. She wants us to believe that she was speaking for the RNC when the RNC was paying for her. So she has credibility issues that she still has to deal with.
Yeah.
Is she speaking for herself or is she speaking on behalf of who's paying her? But once at the RNC, she did say that, hey, I'm speaking for the party. I get that. That's part of the job. So what about here? I will say this. I think your interview did a good job of exposing, I think, many of the contradictions. And look, there's a reason why there's a lot of journalists at NBC News uncomfortable with this because many of our professional dealings with the RNC over the last 6 years have been met with gaslighting, have been met with character assassination. So it is, you know, that's where you begin here. And so when NBC made the decision to give her NBC News' credibility, you got to ask yourself, what does she bring NBC News? And when we make deals like this, and I've been at this company a long time, you're doing it for access to audience. Sometimes it's access to an individual, and we can have a journalistic ethics debate about that. And I'm willing to have that debate. And if you told me we were hiring her as a technical advisor to the Republican convention, I think that would be certainly defensible. If you told me we're talking to her, but let's see how she does in some interviews and maybe vet her with actual journalists inside the network, see if it's a two-way, what she can bring the network. So I do think, unfortunately, this interview is always going to be looked through the prism of who is she speaking for.
There is no question here that what Chuck Todd is saying is absolutely right. And it doesn't seem, at least as of right now, that they care over there at MSNBC and NBC. Here is this morning from Morning Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski saying she's not going to be a guest on this program. It is not typical to see on-air talent criticize the hiring of other on-air talent in this way. Will it make a difference? I don't know. Let's listen to what Joe Scarborough had to say.
Be surprised to know that we've been inundated with calls this weekend, as have most people connected with this network, about NBC's decision to hire her. We learned about the hiring when we read about it in the press on Friday. We weren't asked our opinion of the hiring, but if we were, we would have strongly objected to it for several reasons, including, but not limited to, as lawyers might say, Ms. McDaniel's role in Donald Trump's fake elector scheme and her pressuring election officials to not certify election results while Donald Trump was on the phone.
Right. What he's saying here is you could argue that Ronna McDaniel is effectively an unindicted co-conspirator in one of the greatest and most deplorable attempts to subvert democracy in American history. Now she's going to be commenting on NBC.
To be clear, we believe NBC News should seek out conservative Republican voices to provide balance in their election coverage. But it should be conservative Republicans, not a person who used her position of power to be an anti-democracy election denier. And we hope NBC will reconsider its decision. It goes without saying that she will not be a guest on Morning Joe in her capacity as a paid contributor. Here's why.
But to the question, though, do you disagree with Trump saying he's going to free those who've been charged?
I do not think people who committed violent acts on January 6th should be freed.
So you disagree with that? He's been saying that for months. Ronna, why not speak out earlier? Why just speak out about that now?
When you're the RNC chair, you kind of take one for the whole team, right? Now I get to be a little bit more myself, right?
So listen, she's making the argument, I said what I had to say when I was running the RNC, and now I'll say what I have to say, or now I guess she's saying she'll tell the truth about what she thinks now, because she's now unshackled or whatever. But as Chuck Todd said, was it her real opinion then or now, or are all of these just things she's saying because she's getting paid? But I think the bottom line of it is this. I get being a spokesperson for something else, but to be a spokesperson for the lowest anti-democracy conspiracy that I remember. I mean, I can't remember a worse one being attempted by a sitting president ever in the United States. To say, I'm just a paid spokesperson, this is my job. At a certain point, you have to say, this is too low. This is too low. I get that I'm the RNC chairwoman and I have to defend, I guess, what the Republican Party is doing. But these attempts to subvert democracy, I'm not just going to do it because I'm getting money. And she never did that. So we don't know what she thought then, what she thinks now, what she really thinks. Here's a little bit of another excerpt from her interview with Kristen Welker over the weekend.
I live in Wayne County. Are you okay? Are you all right? Vote your conscience, not pushing them to do anything. And then let me add one other thing. She was threatened to such a degree, Monica, that somebody's gone to jail. Yeah. I'm not going to say the threats that she had, but we can't as parties say we shouldn't be attacking election workers. Election workers need to be safe. And then when it happens to Republicans, ignore it. And only report it when it happens to Democrats. Someone went to jail for these attacks.
I understand what you're saying about the concerns about her safety, but you got on the phone with her, with the then president of the United States. How can anyone see that as anything other than
to change your vote?
But you said do not sign it. If you can go home tonight, do not sign it. How can people read that as anything other than a pressure campaign?
No, the pressure was being put on them from the hours and hours of threats and abuse they were receiving that coerced them to change their vote. And they shouldn't have had to deal with that.
But if they're on the phone with you and Donald Trump, who was then the president of the United States,
I was not telling them to do anything. What I'm saying is I support you voting your conscience.
Do you, knowing what you know now, do you regret making that phone call, Ronna?
I regret the fact that people are being threatened for doing their job in this country.
There you go. Do you regret making that phone call to start urging election officials not to sign off on the results? I regret that people were getting threatened. So Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski, Chuck Todd, they are all absolutely correct. This is not a free speech issue. I know that we will get the right wingers saying, oh, David, you want her speech taken away. Being a $300,000 a year paid contributor on NBC is not a right. It's not the government who is suppressing her speech if they don't hire her, much like I don't have a right to speak at whatever college I might want to speak at. She doesn't have a right to make these comments on NBC or MSNBC. So I don't even care if they fire her. I don't watch this crap, and I don't plan to pay any attention to the things she says beyond the fact that it's interesting that there is an on-air revolt against her. But it is it really shows the gamification. Oh, well, this was someone in a position of power, so she would make for a good analyst now. She participated in a vile and disgusting attempt to overturn democracy. And she's now being rewarded as someone who is going to give us insight into what is taking place at the Republican Party. Give me a break. As many of you have heard me say before, when I go to a wine shop, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm Argentinian, and I still know almost nothing about wine. So if you're like me, you might be able to use some help. Our sponsor, Naked Wines, has you covered. Naked Wines is a subscription service that will connect you to the finest independent winemakers on the planet. You pay a fraction of the price you'd normally pay in stores because they cut out the retail middlemen. You get exclusive access to hundreds of top quality award-winning wines. They get delivered however often you want, perfect for any type of wine drinker. You'll get background information on the bottle. You have friends over. You can seem like you know something by telling them something about the wine. My girlfriend likes white wine. I'm more of a red guy by necessity just because I'm Argentinian, even though I know absolutely nothing. So we get like a split box that has a few bottles of each. Every bottle is a passion project from some independent winemaker. So you're literally making an independent winemaker's dream come true. You'll get your first 6 bottles for $39.99. Go to nakedwines.com/Pacman and click enter voucher at the top and type in Pacman as the code and as the password. The link is down below.